Hello and welcome back everyone. In the last parts we created this Viking house and we modeled it, we added the textures, we did some UV unwrapping, so this is what we have right now. And you might argue, okay, this looks fine, we can actually leave it like this, and if you just want to use it for a render, you can actually just finish it off here and just like use it as a render. If you want to use it as a game asset or like generally exported, you don't want to have like the current shading setup that we have. So currently we have a lot of different textures and it's like all very loose, and the UVs are just looking all over the place, so they're really stretched. And that's kind of like what you don't want to have, like when you export it, that they're like so huge and just stretched all over the place. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna take all those textures and bake it onto one single image. And that way you can easily export it, for example, to Unity, Unreal Engine, or wherever you want to use it. And that makes it really easy to also paint on it later on. So you don't want to paint on your tileable textures because that's like obviously destroying your tileable textures, but you want to paint like later on the final result. Okay, so this part is a little bit, I would not say tricky than what we did before, but kind of just watch out what you're doing, because what we're doing is we're going to create another UV map that is kind of going to be our final UV unwrapped mesh. So what we're going to do is we're going to swap here into this panel, the object data properties. And here you can see you have those UV maps properties here. And right now we just have one UV map, which is like the visible, the rendered one. And what we can do is we can just add another one. So this way we have now the same object has now two UV maps. So for example, like you can have one UV layout for this one and another one for this one. So here for the first one we want to keep those kind of stretched, whatever, that are kind of making use of the tileable textures. And the second one is going to be our nice one that we want to have for the final result. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this UV map for all of the objects of our house. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm just going to go through here. So I have my collection of Viking house parts, and I'm just going to go through it all. So I'm going to click on one and I'm going to say I want to add a new UV map. I first have to go into object mode to kind of go into that object, and then here we can click another on the plus just to add another UV map. You can also relabel it. I don't really care how that is labeled, so I'm just gonna leave it like that, and then do it for all of the parts that we have. Okay, here we go. So all our houses have now that extra UV map that we're going to use. Now we're just going to select them all. So you're going to hold shift and select them all, and you're going to swap into edit mode. And now you can see, okay, here we have now that huge mess. This is basically all the UVs map, how they're tiled on the tileable textures currently. And what you can also see up here, it should show you UV map 001. So you can swap here to the other one, but we want to have here the second one. So we want to work now with the new UV map. Okay, so we want to create now a new clean one. So what we can do to start is go from UV and say pack islands, and then yeah, let's keep it like that. Oh, we first should select everything and then of course do that pack island. Okay, and here we see now we have kind of like they all got kind of sorted onto this plane, and you want to have some distance between them. Okay, so basically what you should consider is you might notice that there are some UVs that are double because we have some objects double, like mainly those parts here up front and back here. So those two are duplicates. And a lot of times when you see UV maps, you're going to notice that the UVs, they are basically like, so multiple parts are sharing the same space on the UV map. So what you could do is you can delete the second part, for example, the back part here, and then just sort out those UVs from the front part, and then kind of duplicate it so they share the same space on the texture. Now, if you do that, you have to be aware that sometimes for games, you use the kind of texture to also bake shadows on it. So let's say, for example, like here, if you would bake shadows on it, you would see a shadow here from the shield, because that would save for the game engine some computational part and would make it a little bit faster if you already calculated the shadows and just bake it into the texture. Now, if those two, like if the front and back share the textures, you would also see a shadow up here, and that would kind of be really irritating, because you would be like, why is there a shadow over here? There's no object there. So you can do it because you can give basically the same object more pixel space, but on the other hand, you have to watch out, like if it's like likely that where it's used it's gonna bake some shadows onto the texture, then I would say like better don't do it. Especially like if you have enough space, don't do it. If you think like for example, like really small things like these, you could say like, oh yeah, I can just duplicate them because they're like always going to be the same, and like there's not going to be any shadow around that's going to be really distracting. Okay, so that's just something you want to keep in mind. Right now we're just gonna keep it all like it is, and not gonna work with the duplicates. Okay, so what you want to do is basically now with that UV map is just scale up the parts that you want to have more space on the UV map, and for example scale down the parts where you think, okay, they don't need basically anything. And then also what I like to do is kind of sort them, so put all the wooden parts together, all the stone parts together. That makes it look nicer and also easier if they kind of tend to overlap, or if there's something going wrong, then they still have like that same texture around them. Okay, so what we're gonna do, you can go up here in face selection mode if you have that, or press 3 on your keyboard. That will also go into face selection mode. And then we can press L to select one of these islands to move them around. And now we just have the same keyboard shortcuts as before. So G to move them, S to scale them, and R to rotate. If you're in the right window, yes. Okay, what you can also do, I just pressed Alt A to deselect. For example, we want to know like, oh, what is this part here actually on our house? So you could go ahead and like see, and we see, okay, this part here is relative to that one. Or what you can also do is you select something, and then on your numpad press the dot or the comma, and it will kind of focus on that part. So sometimes that helps if you're like selecting in a UV and you don't even know like where it is on the mesh. You can just press that dot and you can see where it is and what it is. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so here we go. One more important thing that you might want to look out for is that you have quite some space in between the UVs. It depends a little bit on what your final resolution of the texture is going to be. Because if you have a higher resolution, you also want to have more space around the UVs, and for lower ones, you can actually keep it. Mainly because if you scale the texture later on, the UVs might kind of map to the surrounding pixels, and it's nice to have kind of like a border around them when you bake the textures. So if you scale them later, it still looks fine, like the textures and everything. Okay, so we have our UV map ready. So we did that now on UV map 001. Now we want to have one image where we have these kind of colors mapped onto this. Okay, so how do we do it? We go back into the shading tab here, where we have all our materials already set up. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new image texture. So we want to go to Shift A, texture and image texture. Here we go. Now we want to create a new one, which we're gonna call whatever, Viking house. Yeah, Viking house color, for example. I'm just gonna go with 1K for this one. You can also go to whatever you need, and I know that we don't have any alpha values, so we don't have any transparency here, so we kind of save a little bit in the size later on, and then we click OK. We are not going to connect that to any of the rest of the graph for now, okay? So what we can do now here is find that Viking house color. So right now it's just a black texture, and what I want is to have that in all our materials. So right now I'm in the roof material. I'm gonna go over here. Wait, we can actually, so with this one selected, so Control C, and then I'm gonna go into the other materials and Control V. You're gonna see, because right now like my roof is the main selection, so it's kind of swapping materials here, but that doesn't matter right now. So just gonna go into rope and Control V and paste everywhere that material. Okay, and now I'm just gonna go this one back to the roof so it looks normal again. Okay, so now in all the materials we have this one texture node, which is this black material where we want to have our texture in the end on it. Okay, so to bake it, we can follow a similar procedure as always. So we're going to switch the rendering engine to cycles, and then we have down here the baking options where we're going to say what we want to bake. So we want to start with the diffuse color, which is going to be here, and you have influence, so you can bake the direct and indirect light. We don't want that, we just want the color for now because we didn't set up any special lighting. And we don't need the selected to active because it's kind of baking on itself, so that's fine. And here we have the output. Here we have a margin that is kind of the border around the UVs. We can see if 16 is fine. And this one we do not want to clear the image, so there should be no tick here, because clearing the image, so as soon as you will bake, for example, the wooden parts on here, it will clear it and then bake the stone on it, and we want to keep the wooden part and then add kind of the stone on the side of it. So this is kind of what we want to do. And that's already it. So here we can just click on bake. When you're baking, you can either select all of the objects that you want to bake on the map up front all at once, or you can click through one of them. So you select one of them, you bake it, and you select the next one. So here for the base color, I'm doing that approach of just baking them separate by a time, so I can kind of see if the UVs are overlapping too much, or if they're kind of if it's getting baked on the right image texture. So in the node graph, you always want to make sure for each object you're clicking that one texture is always selected. Now here, for example, that looks a little bit too close. So here, this part is overlapping, so we want to change that. So I'm gonna go back into UV editing. Gonna select the house and this one, and just gonna say this one we're just gonna scale a little bit down so it's kind of out of the way. So we're just gonna clear this and start all over. Okay, so here we have our first texture. This is either diffuse, and we can see, okay, this is still like overlapping here, so the wooden part is not great. So we just want to fix this one. This here is also a little bit too close with the shield. The rest looks fine. Like here, if the wood is overlapping a little bit, that is okay. That's because they kind of share the same texture. You won't really be bothered by this, but like this one here, this part is something we want to change. So you're just gonna select everything, go into edit mode, and see where this is. So this is this part here. Let's scale this a little bit more. Okay, so here we go again. We go into shading. I'm just gonna keep it all selected. I'm gonna say clear image. Let's just do it once. So clear image, just to get rid of all the ones before. And now we're gonna select them all all again, and then say don't clear image and bake. Okay, cool. So we have our first final texture. You can see we have a lot of wood going on here, the roof, all the other parts. So what we also want to do is we want to have the roughness from all the maps. We want to have the metallic, and we want to have the normal input from all of these. So what we're going to do is basically just repeat this step and just change the bake type. So in order to bake the roughness, we need a new image texture. We can do that several ways for creating a new one. So we could go over here to new image and then say Viking house roughness. And again, we're going to keep these also. Okay, here we have that one, and then here we just want to make sure we have that Viking house roughness selected, and we want to make sure that we have that for all the other materials. So the black, the roof. So always in this node we want to have the roughness now. Okay, so just gonna double check. That has roughness, roof has roughness. And then for roughness we have here bake type, and we can go for roughness. And then we still have all the things selected. In everyone we have this node selected, and then we click on bake and we keep the same information. Here we go, and we have roughness finished too. So the last one I want to do is the normal map that we're going to bake. So this is going to be Viking house normal, and we keep all the rest. Okay, and we follow the same procedure. So we change this one to Viking normal. Okay, so normal, we have it here selected in the wood. Now we're going to go through and change that. Bake type, we're going to change that to normal, and then we can just leave everything as it is and click on bake. Okay, so when you will look at the normal map, you want to check if everything is looking as you expected. So for example, if you're like unsure like with the colors, is that really like how it's supposed to look? So what you can do is you can go here into this option menu, and here you have face orientation, and that is basically coloring your faces either blue or red. So blue means it's kind of pointing outwards, and red is the inside. So what you want to see is having all of this blue. So if one of them is facing in the wrong direction, so let's take for example the shield, you say this face here, or these two, what you can do is you have mesh normals, and then you have that flip function. And here for example now you see that, so these two are now pointing outwards, and that would look kind of strange. So if I turn this one off, you see that they kind of have a different color, so you can see that there's some difference going on, so you don't want that. I'm just gonna undo that. Let's see if that's now, yeah, so now everything is blue again. Okay, so if you see something strange where you're like, okay, this kind of looks from the color different, make sure that kind of they all face in the same direction, all the faces you want to have in the same direction. Okay, so we have our textures. That's great. Now we can put them all together. So how do we do that? We need a new material for this one. Okay, so for example, we can start with the door. Doors first. Okay, I'm gonna click on this little X to delete it. So you can also do that here. Here we have our list of materials. You can remove that here or here. So you're just gonna go here, and then we're gonna create a new one, and this is going to be our final material. And what we now want here is our baked textures. So what I'm going to do is shift a texture, image texture. And then we kind of connect that one to the base color. And we want to open, so here in the little drop down, we can select our texture, which is going to be Viking house color. That looks like a mess. That's totally fine. We're gonna keep it for that like now. So then we have another one, Shift A, texture, image texture. And here we have our roughness. And I'm gonna say this is a non-color data, and I'm gonna connect that with the roughness input. Here we go. And last but not least, we have the normal, so Shift A, then vector normal map. So we can connect that onto the normal. And here for the color input, we do Shift A, texture, image texture, gonna connect the colors. And we're gonna say here we want our Viking house normal, which is also a non-color data. And here we have it. Now that looks obviously like a big mess, because right now what Blender is doing is he's using a UV map and he's mapping that one on there. Now the UV map that he's right now using is UV map, the first one, because you can see that little render icon here. So if we click on this one, you're going to see now it looks like we would expect it to look. So what we have to do now for the other objects is kind of change the material. So here I want to have the final material, and I want to do that for all the parts. And I want to swap, of course, the UV map too. So we're going to go roof, going to give it the new material, so the final material, and we're going to swap to the correct UV map. And here we go. So from the result, it looks completely the same as before, but now you should, for example, here in your list, you should see there should be always like a 0 in front of the other materials. Those are the ones that we're not using. And we have our final material, so now all of these objects use that one same material, and it's really great for now painting and for exporting. Thank you for watching, guys, and I hope I see you in the next one, where we're gonna do a little bit of painting to kind of finish this off. And what I also realized, I mean, a lot of people anyway don't really watch the end of the video, so I think I can talk a little bit longer, is that this channel nearly reached 2,000 subscribers. I think that's super cool. When I started this channel, I never thought that anyone would watch it, to be honest, so this is really awesome for me. Like, I mean, I know that there are other people who have like millions of subscribers, but I think 2,000 is really awesome, so thank you very much for that. And yeah, I hope like that I can improve this channel even more, get more subscribers, and yeah, I'm glad you all like it and that it goes so well, so thank you very much.